Okay, so I think we can start now. Okay, let's start. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our first web panel. This is an online panel. So first of all, I would like to take this chance to set a foundation for providing us such a great platform and opportunity to talk about a timely topic. SETA Foundation is a leading think tank organization in Turkey, which has branches in Washington, D.C., Berlin, Brussels, Istanbul, and Ankara. So since I started my professional career, I have maybe moderated more than 200 panels, but I have never thought that I will moderate an online panel, especially on such a topic. This is going to be first time that I will try to moderate a global scale online panel. Secondly, I have been taught too much about security related topics in different panels in different countries. But again, I have never thought that I would moderate and talk such a topic. Today, during next 1 hour, we will talk mainly about coronavirus outbreak, but not from the perspective of health or medicine, but from the perspective of international politics, to make sense of international order in the post-coronavirus crisis. There are many unknown unknowns, as Rumsfeld, if you remember, stated before 2003 Iraqi war. Today, there are also unknown unknowns regarding the question of when the corona crisis will end up, and more importantly, how it will end up. So we have 4 distinguished speakers from different parts of the world, from China to Athens and from London to Ankara. So I'm joining this online panel from Ankara. I would like to introduce firstly our distinguished participants. Professor Tao Xie is the Dean of School of International Relations and Diplomacy, Beijing Foreign Studies University. Professor Konstantinos Filis, he is the Executive Director at the Institute of International Relations of Pantheon University. We have also Dr. Andreas Corr. He is the Principal at Corr Analytics. He is the publisher of Journal of Political Risk. We have also Dr. Murat Aslan. He is the faculty member of Hasan Kalyoncu University, and he is the researcher at SETA Security Research Department. So if you are ready, I would like to start first of all with Professor Konstantinos. So he is going to give us a framework, a new framework to make sense of international politics in the post-corona outbreak. So I would like to give the floor, Professor, and give us your idea, your thought about the coronavirus and its impact on international. Then I'm going to give the floor to Andreas. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening from Athens. It's been a pleasure and an honor to join you to this very interesting panel, and I hope that it will be enlightening as well for those who participate through social media. I know that I only have 5 to 6 minutes, so I'll try to be brief. It's been over 100 years since we last dealt with respiratory virus pandemic, and it is true that the World Health Organization, the scientific community to an extent, but the global community as well, were slow in their reaction, and at least until February, they downplayed the seriousness of the crisis, with the exception of China. Before I turn into the international affairs dimension, let me very briefly share with you some thoughts on the impact that the coronavirus has on the economy. It seems that this crisis is worse than the 2008 crisis, and it is possibly similar to the 1929 crash. It is a crisis impacting consumption, production, manufacturing, transportation, investments, financing, and there is also a lack of visibility towards the future. There is a negative impact on the Western economy, but on the Chinese economy as well. In the latter case, production has been restored, but still there is limited market demand, of course with the exception of medical supplies. So the Chinese have no market to supply after they restore their production. In the European case, there should be a bridge for those economies with a liquidity problem, and we know that Italy has been hit very hard from the crisis, as well as Spain, Greece up until now to a much lesser extent, but we hope that the European Union will take some serious steps to showcase its willingness to protect those states that are most hit by this coronavirus crisis. In our case, as it is the case with most Mediterranean countries, we know that we are very much dependent on tourism, and there are indications that we won't have tourism before July, and maybe this is a good scenario. So we will lose significantly more than 3.5 of our GDP. Our tourism, of course, is an export product, as it happens in other Mediterranean countries, which means that it depends on arrivals of foreigners. And with the revenues hit hard, with airplanes grounded, and with the cruise sector collapsing, we will have to see how disastrous this might be, no matter how attractive we make our product. So now for the last 2-3 minutes that I have, do I have them, Mr. Moderator? Okay, I will speak about the geopolitical impact. Here time is a key variable. The extent of global and regional upheaval depends on how long the crisis lasts. There were some pre-existing trends which are now growing stronger, like US withdrawal from a monopoly on world leadership, as well as China's resurgence on the international stage. There is also a return to decision making on the national level. There is also a return to borders as a means of protection, but there is also an increase in inequalities, which was already a glaring problem. Let me very briefly turn to China. China, in my point of view, has gone through 3 phases. Phase 1, there was a denial and even hiding of the problem. Many, especially in the West, see China as legally vulnerable, and there is a debate in the US over whether there should be mass suits against China. In phase 2, there was a suppression of the virus in China through draconian measures and effective limiting of the phenomenon. And in phase 3, we have a planet-wide counteroffensive through exports of technology and aid. We can only have in mind the very strong images in Italy with flags and convoys of aid. I note here that Russia has also sent significant assistance to Italy as well, while Rome's European partners drastically had to restrict the export of crucial medical supplies. In the case of the US under Trump's administration has isolated itself from every international organization. It did not coordinate or convene the G20, the G7, and it didn't collaborate with the European Union. And President Trump, at least at the beginning, more polarized rather than united his audience, and he was in denial, reassuring the people because we should keep in mind that this is an election year for the US. And last but not least, regarding the EU, I'm afraid that we are through an existential crisis and a crisis of cohesion as Europeans. And I'm also concerned that, again, following the financial crisis of the previous years, there is a dividing line between North and South. I can only hope that at last there will be a common denominator among European among European member states, and that we will be able to showcase our solidarity to those European states which, as I said before, are hit more by this coronavirus. I think I'll stop here. Thank you for your attention and patience.
Okay, thank you, Professor Konstantinos. I would like to raise questions to Dr. Andres. Andres, as you can, understand, there are many different explanations about the issue of international politics. While some scholars argue international order reshape of the coronavirus outbreak, others will be, I think, a vital role in terms of reshaping international order, especially in the context of China-centric globalization. This is a very strong claim made by different scholars. What's your reaction? How do you think about the international order after this coronavirus outbreak?
Thank you, Professor, and thank you, Sita, for the honor of joining the discussion today. I really appreciate it. My short talk is titled "The Effect of COVID-19 on International Order." On the U.S.-China relationship, first of all, I have to disagree with my colleague from Athens. While it is true that politics is polarized in the U.S. on most topics, China's failure to stop the new coronavirus, COVID-19, and its failure to fulfill supply contracts for medical equipment will have a negative effect on global international cooperation, as he said, but also on China's status as a trustworthy economic trading partner. China is rightly blamed for the pandemic, both because it failed to close the wet markets from which the disease most likely jumped the species barrier to the human population, and because in response to the outbreak, rather than transparently eradicate it, the authorities in Beijing denied and continue to deny the problem. This allowed it to become an epidemic in China and then to spread globally as a pandemic. As my colleague mentioned, there are already legal arguments and court cases emerging to force China to pay for its negligence. Professor James Kraska at Harvard Law School argues that damages could be in the trillions of US dollars. One lesson that the world will truly draw from the COVID-19 crisis, pandemic really, will be to diversify supply chains, especially essential or strategic supply chains away from China. That will decrease trade with China. Decreased trade, when combined with human rights and territorial disputes, as well as China's arms buildup, increases the likelihood of a spiral towards conflict, especially with the United States. There are at least 5 unfriendly Chinese actions of note that emerge from the COVID-19 crisis that are driving this decoupling and increased risk of conflict with China. First, China did not accept COVID-19 material or CDC assistance proffered by the United States. Second, China actively hid the extent and danger of the virus to the world. Third, some Chinese leaders initially suggested that China's medical supplies would be denied to the U.S. for political reasons. This was in-state media. Regular orders of personal protective equipment were not completed since early January, and Canada's face mask factories were requisitioned by the Chinese government and stopped shipping to Canada per their contracts. Fourth, China allegedly sent faulty pandemic supplies, including face masks and test kits, to many countries, including Turkey, the Czech Republic, the Netherlands, and Spain. Fifth, China sought to deflect responsibility for the pandemic through state amplification in state media of fake news that COVID-19 was started in the US and Italy. These 5 unfriendly Chinese actions will only further strain China's relations with the world. Countries like the US, Japan, and Britain are already taking action to attempt self-reliance in the supply of critical pandemic supplies, so this will never happen again, as well as other essential and strategic goods like 5G, services, and resources. That will increase protectionism throughout supply chains, global supply chains, for these assets, decreasing the international trade with China that has a pacifying effect on international relations. So to improve this situation, I'm hoping that China will take robust steps in terms of its approach to international trade, improving international trade, improving supply chains, and taking a more peaceful approach to international crises in places like the South China Sea, the East China Sea, and on human rights issues like Uyghurs and Tibet, and also on territorial issues like Taiwan. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Andres. Dr. Murat, I would like to turn to you. So what's your reaction, especially from the perspective of security? Do you expect any kind of big impact of coronavirus over the security situation in different, places, especially what you think about this Syria and the other security issues?
Thank you for the word. First, I want to thank you because this is the first occasion I'm participating in an environment like this. For the first pandemic political and security environment, my argument is there will be a change after lessons learned, but pending to the consciousness of international community, mainly the civil society groups, and actually still we cannot predict at what level such kind of consciousness will evolve in the coming term. But there will be, I believe. And the question we should answer from an academic point of view is that we need to conceptualize post-pandemic term in terms of political and economic impacts, mainly in the field of security. But in order to conceptualize it, what type of change and in what context will that change will occur? That's the essential question, I believe. And to find answer for such a question, we should compare states and societies. Okay, we know that states are incapable of responding such kind of natural disasters by themselves in the current age. But there's another reality. There's a permeability of societies. That means societies do interact with each other, and it's a reality, and they can easily challenge the authority of either regimes or states. Then societies by themselves can surpass the states in terms of efficiency and infiltration to the other ones. Such kind of reality means a push for state actors to offer first welfare, soft security, and compatible rights affiliated with the prerequisites of the current age. What I mean is that pandemic disease is one issue to be addressed, though there are other issues like immigration, for instance. Or just imagine what happened when an earthquake had hit the Indian Ocean and a tsunami afterwards. That means states must respond to such kind of threats in the coming era, and this pandemic disease affected the whole globe, not a specific region, then this expectation will encourage societies to raise their hands and voices and demand the states. Otherwise, the regimes and the systems, political systems in the states will be in danger. Okay, this pandemic will not be the latest. We had, on the other hand, just only one of the others. That means we should expect natural disasters in the coming terms, as we do not respect the nature. Because when we downgrade the environmental politics and do not address what nature requires us, that means in the form of green politics maybe, that means we will be exposed to the dangers of nature that we can't control and respond. Then vigilance is the essential task, appears to be the essential task of the state in the coming term as the priority. On the other hand, we know that the use of language after this pandemic disease has changed. For instance, today is one of the titles in the United States in a very respected newspaper was that combat with coronavirus. That means combat is not anymore against an threat or enemy, but a virus. Okay, that means that we also surpassed hard security concerns to superior resources, but we are required to efficiently reallocate the resources to the critical areas of interests, including this pandemic disease. Another conceptual dimension is that now high politics and low politics are challenged. Now we have a low profile in high politics, but a high profile in the low politics. That means meanings has changed anymore. For instance, during the Cold War, we were talking about hard power. Later than in 1990s, Joseph Nye had coined the term soft power, and before that we had integrative power, maybe you remember. And after 9/11, we had smart power, and in the current age, we are aware that we are facing soft threats, not power, but threats. What soft power could not achieve in 1990s in terms of cooperation and collaboration and downgrading the threats that are perceived at that time, now soft threat is achieving. That's a reality. So the nature of conflicts will change then. New conflict nature is complex and blurring, as you know, and we witnessed in Syria, Libya, or Yemen, and this pandemic reminded the need of collaboration, even though statesmen do not respond it. For instance, Pompeo refused the embargo issue against Iran to fight against the coronavirus in the Iranian territory. Once Iran deals with this issue, that means it will spread again. Then statesmen do want to be stick to hard power assets. So what challenges such kind of attitude? Reaction at the public level, I believe. In this sense, if reaction is hard enough and pushy to the statesman, the priorities of state will change. Be more focused on internal affairs, be more concerned with the soft threats, and more hesitant to hard power applications, as already witnessed in Syria case. And I have a suggestion at the end, actually, just to manage the current situation and respond to future soft threats. I think we all humans need a type of organization of international disaster and control response. World Health Organization is only dealing with health, but we need a disaster control and response system that is founded by all state actors, and it will be then a kind of platform to have all actors be coordinated and more committed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Murat. I would like to turn to Professor Tao. Can you hear me, Professor Tao? Yeah, could you please turn on microphone? Could you please turn on your microphone? Okay. So,
Yeah.
all right. So now you can hear me, right?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. So I think I think you are going to be last speaker. I want to ask you basic questions. Different narratives about China. While the case President Trump is blaming China as China, is spreading of this coronavirus, the others are believing that China is going to be another, country which will, shape a reaction about, position vis-a-vis this coronavirus situation. What's your reaction about the future of international order in the context of competition between United States and China?
Well, let me start by responding to what Mr. Corr just said about China's responsibility for the spread of this coronavirus. I'm a Chinese and I'm a dean of the school, but I do not work for the Chinese government. But I have to say I feel very disappointed by what he just said. This strikes me as kind of a political broadside against the Chinese government and putting all the blame on Beijing for whatever goes wrong in London, in Accra, or in Athens. I think that's totally nonsense to me. I'm speaking this as an individual person. I'm saying this because we all made countries. We tried our best to try to contain it within the borders of China. And that's why Wuhan, a city with 10 million plus people, had been literally put under quarantine for nearly 2 months. And so the ban was just lifted, right? And so look what happened during that period of time. What did New York City do? What did London do? What did the governments around the world do? There's all this time for people to learn, to get ready for what could potentially happen. After all, this is a virus. A virus recognizes no national boundary. A virus recognizes no race, religion, or language. And so I think this is a totally politically biased to say that, a Harvard law professor is going to file a class action lawsuit against China. That's totally nonsense.